Smoking was very normal growing up. Big motivation for me has been to see people in my life, especially men, being drawn into this addiction. Teens and 20s, my addictive pattern was more towards a sexual addiction and pornography. And it took me, again, a lot of time to recognize that it was coming from disconnection from myself. And the real problem that we are dealing with as smokers, and I empathize with them, is that we don't even recognize that we have a problem that we're dealing with.
A hypnotherapist who has helped over 300 people quit smoking. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Sunny Job, who's going to be talking to us about unhealthy habits, addiction, quitting smoking, and a lot more. So, welcome, Sunny, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal health and well-being story and your current work?
Hi Sakshi, thank you so much for having me here. I've been doing this for the last 4 years now, and one might wonder why such a low number. I mean, just 300 plus in just 4 years is because I'm quite picky with who I work with, and this may sound like it's just smoking problem, but based on my experience of working with people, it just goes much deeper. On the surface, it looks like it's a problem with willpower, which a lot of smokers think it is, but it is just half truth. There's a lot more than that. There is something deeper that is not okay, that is not setting okay, and it's mostly disconnection, and that is being you could say compensated by something like smoking. As far as my own journey is concerned, I practice yoga for my well-being. That's just my personal preference. It helps me with a meditative state and helps me stay calm, stay clear in my thinking. That's been the journey for the last 4 years again. And I watch out for my diet, what I eat. I've been practicing mostly a OMAD diet again since 2018, and that has helped me lose a lot of weight, keep it off at the same time, feel much lighter. And I do practice mixed martial arts in the evenings to again stay fit. So that's my journey.
Amazing. That sounds so interesting, and we're so glad to have you on the podcast today and talk about such an interesting topic today, because I'm sure everybody has, a family member or friend or many friends probably who are always talking about quitting smoking, but some or the other they can't get around. And to begin with, I mean, were you also a smoker before? Like, do you have a connection with that? How was it like?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I just recently did a corporate workshop, and this is the first thing I said. I mean, whether you're a smoker or not, 99.99% of people who are even watching this podcast or listening to it right now, either they fall in the category of being smokers themselves, or at least knowing one person in their entire circle of friends and family or colleagues whom they care about, but they still smoke and they can't do anything about that. So I think almost all of us either know someone who is smoking or are smoking ourselves. And great question. Like, did I have a smoking habit? I have smoked a little bit, but my journey into smoking mostly has been with smoking weed, cannabis. This was again back in 2015 when I first started off smoking up. But more than the addiction of that substance, which of course it had its own addictive pattern in my life in the ensuing years. For me, the addictive pattern was watching my father, like who just quit smoking in the last few years, and his journey. And again, smoking was very normal growing up in the time when I was growing up, where my granduncle, my uncles, like everybody around me, like typical Catholic Mallu family, everybody is smoking around me, and so that was a normal thing to watch. Big motivation for me has been to see people in my life, especially men, being drawn into this addiction. But for me, my addictive pattern was different, and I have really gone deep into explaining that on my website. But yes, for many years throughout my teens and 20s, my addictive pattern was more towards a sexual addiction and pornography, and it took me again a lot of time to recognize that it was coming from disconnection from myself and not really what I thought it was.
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And to begin with, what are, according to you, the first few steps that it takes that are important in order to quit smoking when anybody has this intention?
Well, the first step is to recognize that that you need help, that you are in trouble. So just observe and say that, I asked this question, at when do you recognize that you have become addicted, now you're dependent? Simple question that one can ask themselves, and this is equal to any kind of addictive behavior or pattern, is So in terms of cigarette, are you smoking the cigarette or is the cigarette smoking you? If you can answer that question honestly, you know if you are already way out. Because no one starts, like it never becomes an addiction actually on an event, right? It starts off with almost people, the body hating it, coughing, aggressively, but it's a process. Go through it. It's like a quicksand. Before you know it, you already neck deep in it and you realize, oh, I didn't realize I've come this far. So that question really sets people thinking, yeah, am I really smoking or is the cigarette smoking me now? And if you're honest, you know the answer. So that's the first step. The first step is to just acknowledge it to yourself.
Of course, that makes so much sense because a lot of people don't even get around accepting that they are addicted to something. Because it's probably so embarrassing or it's unbelievable to even talk to themselves with these words that I am addicted to smoking, because it's a big thing for them, right? And connecting to that, my next question is that can we wean off smoking? Because everybody who's trying to quit for years or for months, they're like, okay, no, I'm not addicted. I'm just smoking 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. They probably have come down to the number from 10 to 5 to 1, but they've just not quit it. Can we actually lower the number of the smokes that we're having a day, or should we just clean stop it whenever we decide to do?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that question. Now that's something that is, if you go on YouTube right now or Instagram, a lot of people will say that just drop it by 1 cigarette a day or half a cigarette a day. Don't attack yourself too much, reduce it. In fact, if you call the 1800 number on the cigarette packs that are there, that's mostly going to an NGO. I won't name them. Even they start giving the same advice. Start dropping the number. Don't stop directly, but start dropping the number. Thing about that is, the problem with smoking is, like anything else, is that it is not smoking. And this is why I just would like to take a step back before I answer this question to the previous point that we were talking about, right? You were saying about it's so important to admit to yourself that you are addicted. But oftentimes, Sakshi, the real problem that we are dealing with at most smokers, and I empathize with them, is that we don't even recognize that we have a problem that we're dealing with. Like someone very dear to me, like the ex, in fact, said that, Sunny, you are doing what you're doing, like you're acting out in this behavior. After a series of like really having a lot of back and forth conflict, one day she was calm and she said, you're doing this out of pain. I think you're in pain. And my response to that was, what are you talking about? Like, I'm just doing this because I am a-hole. Like, that's who I am. I was willing to admit that, but I didn't even know, if not this willingness, I didn't even know that I was in pain. And this is where, now to come back to your question, whether it should be reduced or not, I say that smoking itself is never the problem. Sounds funny because that's what I project myself as. I'm a quit smoking specialist, but I'm not solving smoking problems for people. I'm helping people find out what is it in your life that keeps the disconnection persisting. Beneath that, like that unconsciousness, the pain that you have and may not realize, or it may not be pain, it could be just you just don't know what it is. So cigarette becomes like a painkiller and you're just smoking. Now with the painkiller, sure, it can be a strategy to reduce it, but ultimately you're still attacking the painkiller, thinking that is the problem. And this is what I want to shift. What my endeavor has been is to shift that cigarette is not the problem. You could replace it with any drug. And changing that, tweaking that does not make a difference. You need to go beneath the need for escaping with smoking. And when you resolve that, there are at least half a dozen things that start getting resolved, which is most cigarette smokers they're dealing with anxiety at some level. They have panic attacks, they have anxiety, they have issues with sleeping, they have issues with libido, they have issues with disconnection in their relationship. These are the issues that are more, we need to go deeper in those, and those things start getting resolved as we go even beneath that and go subconscious. So now, if a person has all these issues resolved, most of the times he or she just even forget that they need to smoke. Because why would someone reach out for a painkiller when there is no pain? Dropping a number or two, in my experience, both personally and with my clients, I haven't really seen success with that. To anything else, there are exceptions to the rule. Some people may get some kind of results with that, but it's not a very, as popular as the suggestion is, it doesn't have that level of efficacy when it comes to delivery.
Themselves or someone they know. And that's true. There are two kinds of smokers. One is a group of smokers who are like casual smokers. If they just go out for a drink, they would want to smoke, or maybe it's not something that they feel an urge to smoke every single day, but it's an event or an occasion. Maybe it's not something negative per se, right? And there are the smokers that really feel the urge to just go out and light a cigarette when there's something stressful happening, whether it's work, some emotional turbulence in their life right now, and they just have to go out and light a smoke, right? So how can we change this programming for us? Because this is clearly anchored for us, right? I mean, we have conditioned ourselves into it that now I'm getting stressed, I'm feeling triggered, and I just need to go out and light a cigarette. So how can we work with this programming? And since you are a hypnotherapist, also help us understand, for the listeners who are not so familiar with it, how does hypnotherapy come into play?
Yeah, I mean, there are two layers to that question, so I'll come to it one by one. The first layer, as you said, is if there is two kinds of smokers. Is one kind of smoker who just knows that they don't habitually smoke, but they just do it in the mode of just partying and having fun, and just it's just that one time in the office party and I'm smoking with my friends and be like a couple of drags, right? Again, like in this, the same principle applies, the same premise applies. One has, and we all know the answer. Like when we are really honest with ourselves, is that something that smoking, is that something that is within my reach and control? And this is where smokers who are habitually addicted, they snap out of that reality. Like they can't get a hold of it, at least for some time. By the time they are able to answer this question honestly, it's the train has already left the station. Like they're already neck deep in it. And so my suggestion to anyone who is doing this, and I understand the emotion and the energy behind that, is beware of what you're playing with. It's a slippery slope with smoking. And I know there's at least one mentor that I look up to who smokes, right? He smokes, and he's a hypnotherapist. He smokes. I won't categorize him as an addict because he knows, like a bodybuilder who's taking steroids, right? I wouldn't really recommend that to everybody, but someone who is doing comparatively, it never comes with anything good, really speaking. Right. But they know the risks involved, and they know what they're putting, why they're doing it, what they're doing it for. But for most people who just want to work out, not a great idea to do steroids. And the same thing applies to smoking. There's nothing good that is coming out of it, except for a huge hit of dopamine. This again, which is damaging your receptors in the long run. Other than that, there's a lot more fun ways to have fun without damaging the receptors. And this is that one thing that I would say, 7,000 chemicals in just one little cigarette. I don't see anything good coming out of it. But yeah, this is being aware of that one question. Am I doing this or is it doing me? And now to answer the second question, you're right. Like this is so nuanced because you are right. It is anchored. Now, to understand that and keep it really simple for the listeners here, it is, why do we do any of these things? Like, why do we take a painkiller? There are only two reasons why. The bottom of it, right? We are trying to get away from pain. It could be anything. That's one. Or B, we're trying to get towards pleasure that overrides our current state. Like we want to feel better. We don't want to feel good. So how does that play out in life for, let's say, any addict, in this case, smoking, right? Say you've had a great meal. You feel good. I feel nice. I've had a good meal, and then I smoked a cigarette. And by doing that with practice as a process, I'm anchoring the feeling of feeling good and full and satiated with smoking. So that's becoming an anchor. And similarly, my boss fires me at work and he downloads crap at me. And so I want to just forget about that, and I'm just stressed out, so I smoke. So now I'm anchoring the feeling of relief, moving away from stress with this. So in this case, running away from pain or moving towards pleasure, they're both anchored slowly. To begin with, it's important when I'm working with a client or when I even get on a consult call, first try to help them identify where the disconnection, what are the trigger points that you have. So when are you drawn towards smoking? This itself brings a little bit of awareness that they put in this process, brings so much of clarity to them that, I didn't even realize I've been doing this for this or that this time. So that's the first thing. And the second, of course, in hypnosis, what really happens, as you would know, is it's a state of acute focus on one point. And oftentimes, most people who are coming to me for help, they are focused on smoking. I draw them out of that, bring their attention towards more often overlooked aspects of a person, which is just their presence, this physical experience of life. And as we converse, those things start coming up, and I'm talking to different parts of them. Again, to keep it simple for anyone who's listening to this, conversational hypnosis is more about just becoming a mirror for the other person. The person who's sitting in front of you feels really heard. When the unconscious mind recognizes that I am being heard without any judgments or any kind of interruptions, that's when stuff starts flowing out of them, which they may not have discussed with the closest friend or family members in years, or even forgotten stuff that comes out. And those are the very things, oftentimes, that are hiding in the shadows, which they don't know is what is creating all of that craving for them to
Right.
go and smoke.
Amazing. That sounds so interesting, and there's so much power that hypnosis can hold. But for many reasons, maybe many right reasons as well, people fear hypnosis, right? Because it's such an out there concept. It's very new also. But because have you seen this movie Get Out by any chance?
Oh, yes.
It's such a famous movie, right?
Yes.
I mean, and it's crazy scary because
Yeah.
while at one point hypnosis can help you so much, like there's just so much power your unconscious holds, and it can help you in so many areas of your life. At the same time, someone can also make bad use of it, and it can also go wrong in many cases. So how do we know, how can we ensure that it works out for us? Because when we are in an unconscious state of mind, we probably don't know what cues the other person is giving us, if the person is right for us to go with this process, right? So how can we ensure, how can we have more confidence in such a process?
Yeah, and that's a beautiful question. I think, unfortunately, a lot of references to hypnosis comes from media, because most people haven't understood that they experience hypnosis in daily life. Like, we all go through trance states in daily life, right? I won't go into what types of hypnosis, but I'll just say that hypnosis that I do, advanced conversational hypnosis, it's just open-eyed. So most people think that I might come with a pendulum and swing it in their face, and I don't do that stuff.
Right.
I'm just having I'm having a conversation with you right now, and it just is a normal conversation, and the trance that the client goes into is something that their subconscious mind decides what quality of trance they want to go into. From my perspective, the frame that I bring in is of a really good friend that you can trust, sitting in your favorite cafe. And so, there is nowhere we cannot go. I tell you, like, the stuff that comes up, and you might think it's just no smoking, but the stuff that comes up and the stories I've heard it ranges to, like, very benign to bizarre. Like, it is everything, right? And of course, like, my clients, they feel safe because privileged conversation is confidential. And so a lot of stuff comes out. Like, I could tell you, like, one of my clients had said that stuff that came out of her, and she said that I've been married 14 years, I've never discussed with my husband, and it's not that he's a bad guy. Like, I love him and we have a great relationship, but this stuff, like, I almost forgot that this has ever happened to me. I don't know where it came out of, and that's exactly what needed to be dealt with. So your unconscious mind knows. And again, just to allay the fears of anyone listening about hypnosis, the easiest thing to remember about hypnosis is that all hypnosis is self-driven. Like, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So you always are in control, even if someone tries to put you in trance, and you have to play along to go along in a traditional hypnosis. So if I say, okay, now close your eyes and now walk down 10 steps, blah blah blah, you have to be a willing party to it. And oftentimes media makes it look like, oh well, yeah, even the ones you see on stage, the ones who are clucking like chicken, as a hypnotherapist or as a hypnotist in this case, we are trained to pick out people who are highly suggestible. And at any given time, there are 40-50% people in the general population who are highly suggestible. So you tell them that it looks like you're going to get a fever right now. In the next 1 hour, they would actually get a fever because they are highly suggestible. They'll listen to it and they'll create it, right? And we've all done this, right? Haven't we had times when we didn't want to go to school and we told ourselves that my stomach is not good. That day, we actually don't feel good. Like, there's something happens to our stomach, right? At least I've had that as a kid, because my mom would never really let me take a break if I did not have a real problem. So I would create real problem by autosuggestion. So that's the thing about hypnosis. No one has to be scared that someone can take control of your mind or whatever. As long as you're aware and you don't want suggestion, in the middle of the deepest trance, you can say, I reject that. Like, I don't want it, right? But we are being hypnotized more so not by hypnotherapists, but by marketing. And like, in advertisements, there's hypnosis happening all the time. In news, there's hypnosis happening all the time. It's happening all the time. So that's the most sinister.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely so many subliminal messages that we come across, and you don't even notice how that happens. And I think if somebody really wants to see, I'm sure even you're familiar with it, is Darren Brown. and his experiments, and the way he talks about it explains how crazy it is, the way we are surrounded by how media really puts out subliminal messages, and how our behavior is influenced. I mean, we think like we're choosing some things, but probably we're not, and it's been suggested to us. So, I mean, that's something very interesting to look into, because I was so fascinated myself when I saw his documentaries. But thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. It was very interesting, and that definitely gives us a little bit more confidence for someone who wants to consider it. And there are definitely a lot of ways, a lot of layers to it, that you can build that kind of connection or trust with your hypnotherapist, right? So thank you for sharing that. Now we see that someone who has probably taken the decision that they want to quit smoking, they have all the right reasons, and they're really determined for it. They also did quit smoking, but you might see that they gained a lot of weight suddenly. That person probably was even athletic, or someone who was at average health, and suddenly they just put on so much weight after quitting smoking, because probably they replaced the smoking habit with binge eating or something other than that, maybe drinking something else. How can we prevent something like that to happen? Because that is so easily done. You might see so many smokers who are trying to quit smoking suddenly have a sweet addiction,
Yes.
and they would go out and they would just crave desserts that they never did before. So how can we work? How can we make sure that this does not happen?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. Again, it goes back to, I'll give you an example for understanding this, right? Like really get to the bottom of it. See, a person has got bad tooth, right? Let's say a person has got really bad tooth and it's aching like crazy. Okay. Now, obviously, you could always go to dentist, get that fixed, but the first tendency of this person is to go and have self-medicate, to take painkiller, right? It allows this person to go about doing the work, not having to go to the doctor. Great. So it works for some time, for a few days, few months, maybe even a few years, but comes a point where he realizes now that, oh, I noticed that I've been having these pills every single day, and I can't have them anymore. I need to get rid of them. So now he goes to a doctor and says, Doctor, can you please help me get rid of these pills that I'm having, these painkillers that I'm having? So the doctor says, okay, fine, I'll replace it with some organic Ayurvedic pills or some herbal pills. But is that solving the problem of this person, right? It's not, right? It's the main thing is that the problem is the tooth. Go and get that fixed, and when you do that, you won't have to ever worry about the problem that you think was the problem, which is a painkiller. The painkiller would just become irrelevant in your life. You would not even think about buying it or using it because you're not in pain anymore. And this is the premise that I say when it comes to smoking. That problem of weight gain is so relevant when you're going cold turkey, or when you are using even modalities like hypnosis and assume that smoking is a problem. So if you right now, Sakshi, if you were to Google smoking hypnosis script, and you'll find like hundreds of pages of free scripts on the internet
Right.
for hypnotherapists to read for smokers, and all of them are designed with the assumption that smoking is the problem, and that's such a cookie cutter approach. Like, we
Right.
are such unique beings, all of us have such unique stories. There's a reason why every person is smoking. Even though you are smoking in a group with three people, all three of them are smoking for their own unique reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to really find out that what is beneath that and resolve that, because unless we resolve that, then these peripheral issues of depending on something, because you're just switching your painkiller with some other solution, you're not dealing with what is beneath the pain. So it's like, room mein badbu aa rahi hai, so I'll just put the air freshener everywhere. It's stinking, so I'm going to put air freshener. But why not just find out where is whatever that dead rodent is, where is it hiding in the house? Because unless I go and clean that, I can empty cans and cans of air fresheners. It's only going to stink more, and it's never going to
True.
get clean, right? That is where the work is. Clean, find that rodent which is dead and rotting, get that out. Then you don't have to worry about air fresheners.
Right, of course. That makes so much sense, because, I mean, if we ignore these underlying issues, they can also manifest in our body in forms of diseases, or any other addiction as well to replace it, right? Because there's just so much going on that we are not taking out time to understand about our mind, about our past experiences. And we do try to, a lot of us, I mean, even my mom, in fact, because she's really interested in hypnotherapy and in spirituality, a lot of things, right? I mean, we sure have, probably even we ourselves are interested. And we try to go out there and learn from Google or just, like the self meditation apps or the guided meditations, even for hypnosis. There's so many available out there. It would be so amazing to work with an actual experienced hypnotherapist who would know to work right with whatever comes out of you at that point, if you're verbalizing it, and to make changes in that moment itself, other than just hearing the same audio over and over again where you don't even know if it's working out for you.
What I love about what you just said is about the underlying issue creating and manifesting as diseases. It's just spot on, Sakshi. In fact, an example that I give is, I tell my clients this, that as someone who comes to me and say, you are a very intelligent, you're part of a very intelligent creation and species, right? Anything that happens in your body is just not happening for no reason, including the craving, right? Now, on the internet, someone will tell you that craving is it's a crash in nicotine, and so you're just trying to replenish that. That's information that you have read. Is that information helping you solve the problem? If it's not helping you solve the problem, then that information is just good to read. And so the example that I give, and this is again to talk about the disease that you mentioned, is okay, you have got cravings. Now imagine there is a kingdom. You have a king. He's sitting on his throne, relaxed with his nobles, and then there comes a messenger running. He's huffing, panting, and saying, "Sire, there is enemies at the gate. They are just about 7 kilometers outside our city, our fortress. Please, get the armies ready. We need to make sure they're out, right?" And now, watching this panicked messenger, the king is not very happy. He's stressed out looking at this guy. He says, "Just kill this guy. Like, he's giving me stress, right?" And so you kill the messenger. And after some time, there are another 2 messengers running, and they're saying, "Sir, they are now just 3 kilometers away." And he's upset. He kills the messenger. How long will that kingdom last? Like, how long? And isn't that the same case with us? When we get these little nudges, which we call cravings, this is our body trying to talk to us, and our body is communicating to us all the time. And if you go back to what I said at the beginning of our call, which is disconnection, we are so disconnected from ourselves, we're not reading the message. And when we turn to any addictive behavior, in this case, if we are talking about smoking, what we're doing is we're killing that messenger because we don't want the messenger. We kill the messenger. What is the messengers in the body supposed to do? It'll bring more. So you have more cravings now. This explains why a smoker has incremental need for smoking with years going by. It may start with 2 cigarettes but ends up in 2 packs after some years, because the body is trying to give more information, like pay attention. The craving is just to call your attention, so that once your attention falls on something, solutions can come from there. But our attention, we are so scared to look at that. We are stressed about that. We just kill the messenger. And that's what. So cravings can be a great segue into becoming more aware and bringing that connection again. But we just scratch the rash a little longer every time we smoke, and so the rash continues. So yeah, I also like the fact that you said, yes, Google is one thing that says it gives you information. It's sitting with someone who can take you through an experience, and experience is how we learn anything. It's a whole different ball game.
Absolutely, that was a beautiful example, and it's very well said that body never lies, right? I mean, it's always communicating with us. It's giving us messages. If we are aware of it, we will definitely notice and take the right action. So thank you for sharing that with us, and this is an amazing episode. It brings us to the end of the episode. As we conclude, do you have any last messages or thoughts to leave us with?
I would say that to most smokers who are watching this, listening to this, don't take smoking as something that you have to hate, get obsessed about. Anything that you resist is going to persist instead. So if you think about smoking and you say, "I hate it, I want to quit it," instead ask yourself, what do you really care about? What do you really want? Osho had once said this really interesting thing about people who are depressed. He said people who are depressed are really close to waking up and having a more expansive spiritual experience because they are tired of their reality. Right? I would say smoking and being addicted to it and waking up to that reality that you are addicted is actually an opportunity, an invitation to step into the bigger game, which most people around you, even if they're not smokers, may not be recognizing. But because you have come to a stage where you feel so lost and dejected by this habit, you are ready to step into the new thing. And all we need to do is ask, what are we focusing on? Because most smokers are focusing on either the habit, guilting themselves and just using guilt, keep staying in the loop, or they just focus on avoiding the pain or avoiding the feelings inside. And so that's the thought I would leave. Whatever you resist is going to persist, and whatever you just allow and let it be there without guilt, you have much better chance of beating it and actually using it to your next level. Because ultimately, the heart of whatever I do and what I offer, my intention, my desire for my work, is ultimately to accelerate our growth as human beings. We are all here to experience new things, grow, evolve, and addictive patterns from my experience, in my own personal experience, is just you lose years and you lose time, which is like the saddest thing when you look back at life. And there's so much more that you can experience.
Absolutely. That's a really powerful message. Thank you so much, Sunny, for sharing that with us and for being here today. This was a very insightful episode. And for the one,
thank you so much for having me, Sakshi. It was a pleasure having this chat with you. I really enjoyed my conversation with you and great questions. Thank you so much.
So, they can find links in the description below. They can reach out to you and learn a lot more from you.